よはじねよはじねはよはじねよはじねあべによべによべによべによはいへよべによべによはいへはよはじねよはじね
Welcome back to Voices for the Earth. I'm your host, Violet, and today's guest is Dave Arquette. I'm going to let him introduce himself, so just give an introduction of yourself as well as say what you do.
Sekozewa Gwego Ohahunko de Yungats, Waxkalewage, Ganyakahaga, Aquasasni Gidalo. Hello, everybody. My name is David Arquette. I'm Bear Clan, Mohawk Nation, and Aquasasni is where I reside. I was born in Rochester, but I grew up on the Aquasasni Mohawk territory. And as far as I know, as I was little, growing up in a city, there's not much of an environment there. But when my father packed us up and moved us all back to Aquasasni, then it was a big cultural change, a big cultural shock or environmental shock, because then we had trees, land, everything we needed to play in. And so growing up in Aquasasni was quite different than growing up in the city. We were always out in the environment when we were kids. We were playing. We were always out in the woods, checking what's out there in the woods, the plants, the trees, the animals, seeing the animals, the birds, and everything. We were always playing in the woods. And then if we weren't in the woods, we were always in the river swimming or always fishing. We had rivers to fish, streams to play in, and spearfish. So it was quite different environment in Aquasasni, like I said. And so we were always outside playing. Once we ate breakfast and then go out, adventure in the woods. Or if we wanted, we were checking out the streams or out on the river. So there was, and then we had the guards to deal with too. So when we were growing up, so we were quite busy and had plenty to do. So there was nothing for us to be bored with. We even worked on the farms. There was plenty of farms, in Aquasasni to work. I was always busy, working on the farms growing up too. So had that to deal with too.
So the first question is, what is your own knowledge of the environment?
Well, like I said, we were when I was a kid, we were always outside, playing in the environment, climbing trees and, chasing the animals. We would see raccoons, beavers, mink, otter, deer, while we're out there in the woods. And then we see all kinds of birds, even seeing the rough grouse in the fields take off when you're walking, when you get close to them. And then see the fish in the streams, and then we try and catch them, make our own spears. And so we were always out there listening, looking, and learning what's out there in our environment, and admiring it, and just really realizing, how precious this is, and hoping that it stays that way.
I also forgot to mention that Dave is the current director of the Haudenosaunee Environmental Task Force, which is going to be like the next part of the next questions, and I just forgot to mention that. So the next question is, what is the main reason for the creation of HETF, and explain how it functions and its main goals?
Yeah, when I was working for the Tribes Environment Division, that's what I was learning a lot about the pollution uh, that's happening at Aguasasni. All the industries that have been polluting our land, air, and water, and learning how those contaminants that the industries were spewing out of their smokestacks and the outfall pipes into the river, and polluting all those things that I talked about earlier. Uh, our environment got so bad that people couldn't even plant gardens. The fish became so polluted, people couldn't eat the fish. All these things that we depended on, for survival, and so yeah, and so I was working for the Tribes Environment Division when somebody from the Nation Council, they had a meet. There was a call from Onondaga that came to the Nation Council of Chiefs, and so one of the chiefs of the Mohawk Nation Council came to me and said, "There's a meeting in Onondaga, and they want us to bring all the environmental people there, along with the councils, and so they wanted me to go to this meeting before it was even called HETF. It was just a group of us coming down to Daga to talk about environment. And so that's when I met people from the other confederacy. Before, I never got outside of Akwesasne, and I didn't know that much. I knew the other nations exist, but I didn't know much about them. And so me, Henry Lickers, were delegated from the Mohawk Nation to go to this meeting in Onondaga to talk about environment. And so when we got there, there was a leadership from the Onondaga Nation, Oren Lines, and Chief Irving Paulus Gaha, and other leaders from the Onondaga Nation, and then there was leadership from the Tuscarora Nation that showed up, and leaders from the Tonawanda Seneca Nation, and so what brought us there is they wanted all the Haudenosaunee nations to come together because at that time was the UN declared indigenous peoples as the decade. They declared indigenous people decade at the UN, where they for a decade they concentrate on an issue that is concerned to everybody, and so they wanted to concentrate on the indigenous peoples' issues for that decade. And so halfway through that decade, the UN hasn't done anything to help the indigenous peoples. And so Noel Brown, who was the director of UNEP at that time, the UN Environmental Program, and he came to the Haudenosaunee and says, "Can you guys help us with finding the issue to help indigenous people?" And he says, "Well, in order to help indigenous people, you have to help the environment, because then that'll help indigenous people." And so we came up with this document. The Haudenosaunee said, "We'll come up with this document, that has we'll have all our treaties in there and all our documents in there that show that we belong at the UN as nations, not as people. We show the UN that we belong there, and we should participate as nations." And in there, we had things that we have accomplished over decades, centuries of how we help the environment, using our philosophies, our culture, and mainly show the world. And they said, if there's any gift that we can give to the world to help the environment, that would be the Hondo Galiwatekwa. And so we said, if anything, that's what we should give to the rest of the nations to follow to help their environment. So after we put that book together, put that document together to show we belong at the UN, and then they dedicated a whole forum just for the Haudenosaunee people and other indigenous peoples with issues dealing with the environment. And so that's the first time indigenous peoples had their own forum at the UN. And so that's where we introduced the book. Our leadership were there from all the Six Nations. And we had our environmental technicians like myself and Henry Lickers and from the other nations, to back up our work. And so when we left there, we came back. We came back to Onondaga and said, okay, we're going to create this Haudenosaunee Environmental Task Force. That's when the council said they went back home to their own nations, their own communities. They said, we need to bring more people back up. That's when the leadership said, we need to step back and we need to let our technicians take over this work, because they said they did the diplomacy part, now it's time for us to put things into action. And so that's when the leadership went back to their communities and brought more people in to help with the Haudenosaunee Environmental Task Force. And so we came up with our own plan, our own agenda, or establish who we are, your principles, your goals, and we said everything we develop, everything we use, it's all there for us. It was all laid out for us, in all our teachings, all our traditions, like the Great Law, the ceremonies, the treaties. People need to know about all these things if they want to take care of the environment. And they said whatever we develop, to teach our people and our children about how to protect the environment, we would try and develop things that would to teach them, and so they'd be able to continue this work on when they get older and be able to take over this work. When we step aside, like yourself, Violet. And so that's how HETF was established, how we all came together. And before that, too, another reason the task force was created from the Confederacy. We are a committee under the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. They're the ones that established Haudenosaunee Environmental Task Force. And one thing before that, too, is why they brought us all together, too, is because we weren't communicating with each other about the environment. They knew all the problems at Arquette, all the environmental issues we were facing, but they didn't know enough about it where they could do something about it. Same thing at Onondaga. They had all the pollution at Onondaga Lake and how to clean up and how to get it cleaned up. And same thing, Tonawanda, Seneca Nation, they had their issues. Same thing at Tuscarora. We all had these issues, but we weren't coming together to doing something about it. So that's why the HETF was created, because whatever some place learned how to deal with something could help another nation out deal with that same problem. And so that was the another reason why HETF was created, so to bring the good-minded people together to work on these issues, because some of our resources are pretty small. We don't have that many resources, but if we all come together and pool our resources together, like the Great Law, the one dish, one spoon concept, if we have a little bit of money here or something that is at Arquette, I think that somebody else can use, like at Tuscarora, we could gladly share it and help them out with the problems that we dealt with for so long. And then another thing was that the task force was one of our goals is to teach the youth about this and how to reach the youth, get them to learn about their environment and how to take care of her. And so that's why we're glad you came along, Violet, to do this podcast, because we thought about that. What do we need, to reach the youth? Because, I'm too old to know about social media, all these things out there that my kids know and telling me about, Snapchat and Facebook and
Facebook.
yeah, I don't even know
My
how.
mom uses Facebook.
I don't even know how to get on Facebook, so that's why we need to hire That's what we said. We need to get some young blood on staff and teach us how to use this stuff, so they would be able to reach the youth, and then maybe get them involved in some of these big issues that we've been working on for, I would say, decades. And so we know we're not going to solve them in our lifetime, but maybe they will when they get older and have to deal with these issues that we've been dealing with for so long.
So, how have you seen HETF be a positive impact to the environment?
Just what just from learning our culture, learning our ways, and then teaching that to the outside that are working in an environment, like all these other agencies that have been set up from the other governments to protect their environment, like the United States Environmental Protection Agency, and even locally with the in New York State, their Department of Environmental Conservation, because we've been going to them and telling them what you're doing isn't working, and so they're looking for us to show them another way, and so that's what we've been doing for the past decade. We're working with these outside agencies about our ways, our culture, doing what they call cultural sensitivity training with them, because they need in order to work with us, they need to understand us. They need to know where we come from and how we think and how we do things. And so that's what we do with them. And it's just like any other treaty, when we want to establish a working relationship with them, we have to know who each other is first before we can come to a common understanding. And so they like the way we think, they like the way we do things, and we're influencing them from the inside out when it comes to these policies that they're making that protect the environment. And now we're starting to influence them on the decision-making process when it comes to climate change, whenever they're developing these policies on how to, I guess you would say, mitigate. That's the word they use now. They know they're not going to stop climate change, but maybe we could slow it down. And they're looking to the Haudenosaunee, our ways, our culture, our way of protecting the environment to slow things down. And so that's how we're making impact on an environment, I would say, is by working with the people that they're not like-minded, but they have the same goals. I mean, we all have the same. They all have the same goals, is to protect the environment for the future generations. It just they need to be led down a different path on how to do that, because what they've been doing is not working. And so that's what we've been telling them, and that's what we've been working. And so that's where I think HETF has made the biggest impact, is trying to work with these other the outside organizations, trying to influence them to see how they can change their ways and change their policy on how they do things and protecting the environment. Because we said, your way clearly isn't working. You guys got to find another way, because our rivers are still polluted. These toxic waste dumps that they're trying to clean up, they're still there. They still don't know how to clean them up. And so that's what we've been trying to work with them on and stay on them, and keep them responsible for what they're doing to our environment.
So, how does your traditional background influence your job as the director of HETF?
Geez, I don't think I could be HETF director if I didn't have the traditional knowledge that I've learned over the years. I mean, I've had a short life of learning our traditions and learning our culture, but I'm glad I surrounded myself with good people that were willing to teach me about it. like Jake Swampka, he was a leader for the Mohawk Nation, and he was a bench warmer for the Wolf Clan, and then meeting influential leaders from the other nations. Like I said, I never branched out of Aquasasli till they put me on HETF, and then I got to learn from the other leaders from Onondaga Nation, the older guys that sat on council there, and same thing at Haudenosaunee Nation, and then at Tuscarora with Leo Henry here. He taught me a lot about the treaties and how we're supposed to work with the outside governments. So I had a lot of influential teachers, a lot of influential that had a big impact and taught me the culture and taught me the traditions, how the ceremonies run, how you're supposed to conduct yourselves in the ceremonies. And then I didn't realize they were doing this, but eventually I think they were preparing me. Yeah, I didn't know. Like I said, I didn't know this, but I think then in the background they were preparing me to be a faith keeper, because that's what I am now. Then the people that were sitting there as faith keepers, they all passed away, and then there was nobody left. And so next thing you know, they're standing me in front of the longhouse saying, "You're a faith keeper now." So if it wasn't for those people that I worked with in the past, I don't think I could be anywhere where I am today.
So, through your work, how have you noticed the environment change?
I guess the only way to notice the changes in the environment is working in the environment. I've planted a garden, most of my life. And I really seen the changes, like in the last couple of years. Some years it's been really wet, and the plants won't go, and some years have been really dry, and then your plants won't go. So it's I seen the changes in the last couple of years really drastic. One day it'd be really hot, the next day it'd be really cold. And it's really messing up our environment, and it's really changing things really quickly. I've seen, things that have been blossoming early, and then next year they're not. This year we're seeing that the wild strawberries, they're ripening early this year. Well, last year it took a lot longer for them to ripen. So it's really changing how we keep track of time, or by the season. I mean, even some of our seasons are getting shorter. Like I seen that we're even getting a shorter spring, or sometimes there's not even a spring. It just goes from cold to hot. So I've noticed things like that, and I don't pay too much about the animals, how the animals are being impacted, but I just know about our vegetables, our gardens, and how they're being impacted. But maybe the animals, they're being impacted by because I noticed they're eating a lot of our foods in the garden. So maybe they're finding less food to eat. So that's why they're eating all our vegetables in the gardens. That's one thing I noticed too. It's we're seeing a lot more diseases in the gardens, a lot more pests, and a lot more animals in the garden.
How has your knowledge of the environment grown through being the director of HETF?
I think my mind is still growing. It just never stops. Main thing is what's still growing is my knowledge about climate change. And with the internet and everything and communications and stuff, I can find a lot more stuff out there about any kind of thing that you want to learn about. And so I wish I couldn't find these documents on climate change, but I do, because I like to prepare, people what is to come, and what these studies are saying about it. It's just basically, our environment's changing, and we got to prepare for it. So that's what I keep trying to tell others about. And so Yeah, that's the main thing. And being HETF director, the knowledge never stops flowing. It always keeps coming. And that's what takes up most of my time is deciphering what is good, what we need to know, what we need to learn about, and how to pass that on to other people and to the younger generation.
So, our last question is, what message do you have for the youth today and the future generations?
Learn your language, learn your culture, learn everything there is to be. Get out more in the environment, spend less time indoors, get to learn, get to learn your culture, your ways, how we did things, before all this stuff happened to us, before electricity, before technology, because because that's what grounds us and that's what keeps us going as a people, as indigenous people living off the land. Because I think when climate change starts changing things, this is not all this stuff is gonna be reliable. So we need to go back to those things that are reliable. Like the fishing, the hunting, making things from the earth that our Creator has given us here to survive here on earth. Taneto.
Now to Dave for being this episode's guest. Now it's time for our climate change fact of the episode. We're starting off simple for the first episode. So, did you know the simplest way that you can help combat climate change is to talk about it with your friends and family? Although this may seem daunting, it could still provide a way to get others thinking about the changes that are happening to the Earth and help people be more aware of the climate crisis plaguing the Earth. Since talking about climate change is a way to get it to become more socially accepted, while also providing a way for individuals to become more educated on the topic. But also remember to properly educate yourself on climate change from credible sources to prevent the spread of misinformation. To find out when new episodes are released, follow Haudenosaunee Environmental Task Force on Facebook and Voices for the Earth on Instagram. I would also like to say Nyawa to Aaron Printup for the music. Nyawa for listening.